Hello there, this is Swift, bringing you a game of Dawn of War II Elite Mod from Seraph Palace, where we have Chaos versus DoW. It's been a little while since I've covered one of these kinds of games. In fact, I think it's been 5 years since I uploaded a cast, but a lot has changed in the Elite Mod space because, as you can see, we have this seemingly unchanged Chaos Lord versus this very, very new DoW XV8 Crisis Commander. And of course, this guy doesn't just represent one model. This is more than just the last stand asset. This is a whole new faction. We have DoW Pathfinders here capturing this power node. And I'm glad to see it. You know, DoW has kind of been floated for a little while now as this additional faction coming to the game, and it's not necessarily easy adding a new faction to a game like this. It takes a lot more work than people think. And fun little fact, this won't be known by many people, but I actually worked on the very first draft of DoW with Adilla back in 2020. And we worked on it for a couple of years, and we managed to get a good way with it, but you know, it never really saw any real development, and then obviously changed hands a few times. So I'm glad to see it finally in the wild, and also to see what people are doing with it now, because DoW is certainly in a very different place to where I left it. And I'm very, very intrigued to see what this faction is like. It's kind of like a baby, really. It's like having a baby and then sort of watching it get adopted by someone else. They raise it in sort of different ways, and you know what, that's fine. I think that's good. It's nice to see this sort of thing come to fruition and see what people have envisioned for the faction. And obviously, as we can see, one of the key abilities for DoW here is Marker Light, fired off by those Pathfinders, allowing the Crisis Commander in cover to just get extra chip damage on those Chaos Space Marines. Chip damage is probably not the right word, but I think you know what I mean. He doesn't, however, do so well in close combat, but thankfully he has got that big old jump. And he's quite a beefy guy, 800 HP. Unusual for most of these big tanky commanders, in that the Crisis Commander specializes at range, whereas most of them, such as the Chaos Lord, the Hive Tyrant and the War Boss, tend to do pretty well in close combat. You know, that's sort of their thing. So DoW already flipping the script here a little bit. But here we see these Pathfinders taking this VP, and of course it is Seraph Palace, which, you know, if we're gonna toot my own horn, which obviously, being the arrogant soul that I am, I'm gonna do that. This is one of my maps. It is one of my favorite ones, actually. I think it's one of the ones where the vision just kind of worked, if I say so myself. But it's a very, very neutral map. It's one with lots of points across the middle, and it creates these very, very chaotic fights because it's not a super huge one. And as we can see, these Vespid Stingwings are jumping in here for the DoW Empire player Amove, which are doing, I think, power melee damage, and just generally are a really noisome disruption unit, kind of in a similar way to the Raptors. In fact, we have a very similar sort of mirror build for each one of these players. We have Rebel running double Heretics, CSM and Raptors, with Amove running double Pathfinders, Fire Warriors and Vespids, each fulfilling sort of similar roles, you know? And I don't believe I've actually introduced the players. I am so busy yapping about myself that I have not spoken about who is in this game. We of course have Rebel playing as the Chaos Lord and leading Chaos in general. Will they prove to be a capable general and take the fight to the DoW Empire, taking back the desecrated fortress of Seraph Palace? Or will the DoW gain ground upon this, you know, to be confirmed Chaos Shrine world, or whatever it is? I don't know. I didn't really lore this map very much. It's a palace, you know? And it's seen better days. I mean, it's not looking the best. Could do with some renovations. We have this Chaos Lord just decapping in the middle, taking a little bit of fire from these fire warriors who start off with pulse carbines but can upgrade to pulse rifles later on. This Tau commander kind of walking into a little bit of trouble. He can get suppressed, which is interesting. It's very unusual for these big commanders to get suppressed. The Orc War Boss can be, but it kind of helps to rebalance the Crisis commander so he can't just run at you. We're seeing a very, very big push for the power here by Rebel, and these Vespids are moving in to counter-initiate the Heretics, but the Heretics do manage to get a Doom Blast off. Tau Commander is seen out of the fight, and it's basically a free run at the power here for Rebel. Amove almost managing to take down the Heretics, and he does finish them off with the Vespid Stingwings. That's a very nice early pickup. Even if he got his power bashed, that is one unit down for Rebel. And we should be seeing some interesting things this game. Amove's still not able to get Rebel off his power, which is, their power, which is going to be kind of an issue, potentially, because, you know, you kind of need power. They're going into Tier 2 now. Did lose, the Chaos Lord, though, both the Rebel did, and lost another Heretic squad, so whilst they are dominating this fight for the power, they're doing it at a very, very steep economic cost. Does revive the Chaos Lord now, and the map control is looking reasonably even between both players. These Pathfinders are just going around capping the map. They do have their Shazui leader, indicated there by the red helmet and the detector icon. And right now there's a little bit of a lull in the fighting. I've actually had to re-record this cast because, believe it or not, the first one was okay, but after I looked at it back in my editing software, I realized the audio was clipping all over the place, because despite the number of times I go and record stuff, I still can't seem to just fix my own audio. These Fire Warriors being forced to retreat here makes a lot of sense. They do not want to be tangling with these Raptors, who are a pretty nice choice for dealing with Tau, but may come against a few problems with these Vespids, given that they, I believe, do, power melee, I think I said? I don't remember, but I think they do power melee. You know, those, like, feet. I mean, get a load of those Vespid power melee feet. Crazy talk. Chaos Lord has got the Combi Bolt, and he's facing down against this unupgraded Crisis Commander. Pathfinder's just sort of taking some cover. Don't really want to tangle with the Chaos Lord. Should really be getting out of here, because this Chaos Lord's going to tear them apart. Obviously he doesn't want the power to be bashed, but you do have to pick your battles. Crisis Commander probably should have jumped out there instead, but sometimes you get caught out of position, and in this case these Raptors are really, really helping to set up for a very, very nice power bash. So far, Rebel has been very good on bashing power. Amove has not really had the opportunity to make that economic damage happen. But we have a Dreadnought coming in, so that even when the Combi Flamer Chaos Lord is forced off, this Dreadnought can do some significant damage. However, a counter has emerged on the field in the form of this broadside battlesuit, which is a sort of pseudo setup team. It's capable of firing its smart missile systems on the move, whilst putting its feet in the ground, exactly as you see now, to fire those heavy rail rifles on top, which should be doing significant anti-infantry, anti-vehicle damage. I am stupid. It's a little bit like a mix between a las cannon and a plasma cannon. The advantage being also that it doesn't bleed, but of course, if you lose it, it's a very, very expensive unit to replace. So You do have to be a little careful. Quite interesting, of course. A lot of these DoW models are... I think some of them are from Dawn of War 1, and I think some of them may be using some custom assets, as well as, of course, the Crisis Commander being from Last Stand. As you can see, though, this broadside battlesuit really just showing the range superiority of the DoW tactics, and that Dreadnought is forced off. It's going to have to consider its options. Obviously, I have seen this game before, having re-recorded the entire cast, so I do know how this ends, but there won't be any spoilers. But it's certainly safe to say that we should be seeing some interesting units coming out from both sides. And speaking of interesting units, here we have the Great Gnarlock, I believe, vehicle-armoured monstrous creature, sort of similar to the Carnifex in that regard. Pretty low HP for that kind of unit, given that it's only melee, but one of its great strengths is it has natural regen built into it every time it melees units. So it's capable of sustaining itself in fights. If you can isolate it, you can kill it quickly, but if you get it into a prolonged melee, it should outbrawl enemies. These Vespid Stingwings are getting incredibly low. If the Chaos Lord refocuses them, they could potentially go down on about 10 HP, I think, was the lowest, but they do manage to get out. And this Greater Gnarlock is proving why it is a force to be reckoned with. Just taking on this Chaos Lord right now. Able to completely shut down the Raptors and all the melee plays from the Chaos team. In fact, it sends the Chaos Lord packing. Chaos Dreadnought's going to have to find a way of responding to this, because that autocannon is nice all-round damage, but it's not going to be enough to deal with this Greater Gnarlock. As we can see, the map control, again, still pretty even. We haven't had an attempt on the power by Amove just yet. But these Vespid Stingwings already doing pretty well. Level 2. Khorne Chaos Space Marines also level 2, but I'm not sure that I feel like I've seen much value out of them. They're often present for fights, but not really getting too stuck in. The Raptors could also probably benefit from getting a leader at this point. Just to give them that little bit of extra heft in these fights. It would really help to deal with the Pathfinders and the Fire Warriors. Here we see the Chaos Lord using his aura of no-seeing. It's got a more technical term than that, but that's all you really need to know. See a photon grenade being thrown by the Pathfinders. I hope one thing that I do hope changes is that the effects get toned down, because some of these are super bright. As we can see, the Raptors there jumping in to try to counter-initiate the... not counter-initiate, jump the broadside battlesuit, but the Greater Gnarlock just camping that artillery unit, capable of just scaring off any melee threat. Does get a little bit distracted. Chaos Lord goes after it. He's right now going big into that energy regen aura build, where he's got the Harness of Rage, which feeds him energy for his Dark Halo. But as we can see, these Khorne Chaos Space Marines not currently able to actually achieve very much in these fights because of the presence of this Greater Gnarlock. There's not a lot they can do. And look at these Vespid just really, really ruining the day for this Dreadnought. Like, this is not what you want to be seeing as the Chaos player. Does go for a blood sacrifice on the Bloodletters, and does force off these Vespid. In fact, he is the broadside battlesuit is in a very, very dicey situation here. The Khorne Marines going into base, but they are going to be forced off, losing their aspiring champion. If this Greater Gnarlock moves into position, it could one-shot the last guy. It looks like the famous Dawn of War II pathing has denied that kill, although I'm sure that if Amove had reacted a little bit sooner, could probably have picked them up. Map is slowly turning red in the favour of Amove though, as we can see. This Chaos Lord does pose a bit of a threat to things like isolated power farms, which is probably why we're not seeing any. And also the fact that Amove has lost their farm at least once this game. So it doesn't really have the resources to be going around putting up a bunch of generators. Although that said, there is something of a requisition float from both players right now as they both consider their moves going into Tier 3. Rebel, of course, is already there. Amove is queuing up Tier 3 right now. And there's something of a stalemate going on in the middle. And this is kind of what I like about Seraph Palace in that regard, is that it's capable of making these stalemate games, but they still let you explore all sorts of angles on the map. This Crisis Commander still doesn't have any war gear, although is level 3, which is pretty interesting, whereas this Chaos Lord, fully war geared up and having bashed power, still only level 2. So we can see that even without war gear, Amove has been getting significant use out of the Crisis Commander. Which kind of just shows you that that default burst cannon, it may not be that impressive, but its sustained DPS is still pretty scary. Broadside Battlesuit also level 1. These portraits as well, should be noted, were done by the excellent... Oh, what's the name? They're kind of like me, they change their name all the time. I remember them as Kilgarn, but then I think they changed their name a couple of times since then. But they're an incredibly talented artist who has contributed a lot to Elite Mod. They're the ones who did the Chaos Raptor portrait. They did a lot of Eldar portraits. They did basically all of the Grey Knight portraits. And it's really nice to see some like custom art here for all of these Tau units. It just really, really adds a sense of legitimacy to the mod. Now coming down this narrow street here is the Chaos Predator, and it spots in its sights the Vespid, who will need to get out, and this central courtyard in Seraph Palace is playing host to a small skirmish right now. Broadside Battlesuit picking out targets. This Greater Narlock just kind of sitting back, not really doing a lot. I think we're seeing some newer players here, which, you know, no shame on them, because this game is not easy to pick up. So there may be a few sort of micro hiccups going on. But what is very fascinating is right now we see these Crisis Battlesuits coming out. Tier 3 jump infantry for the Tau. And they're a very interesting mix of Terminators and jump infantry, I guess. You know, they're ranged focused. Unfortunately, the Greater Narlock does pay for this skirmish with its life. The Dreadnought is chasing down the Broadside Battlesuit, and at the same time we have this Predator suddenly quite low as these missiles, the missile pods from the Crisis Battlesuits, which do autocannon damage, which means that they, you know, they're capable of doing significant damage to all targets, just doing an absolute number on it and taking it out, which is very, very unfortunate. Losing the Greater Narlock was not good, but trading it for a Predator, not particularly effective. And we do see that the Broadside Battlesuit also makes it out of the skirmish, so what was looking like a favourable composition for Rebel, I think the scales have shifted a little bit after that fight, and now we finally see some war gear on the Crisis Commander. Getting that Fusion Blaster to deal with a Dreadnought. We'll have to be careful because they're getting very, very low. Let's make a little jump out of there, but should retreat. And these Crisis Battlesuits, I mean, look at that. The Burst Cannon and the Missile Launcher just doing crazy damage. But we do see, dropping down on them right now, Chaos Terminators. A very, very nice response to these Crisis Battlesuits who have locked in a War Gear loadout. I'm not sure if they're capable of switching, but these Chaos Terminators should deal with them very, very nicely. The Chaos Lord chasing, and I believe this is the DoW nuke going off right now. I think it works similarly to an orbital, but I think it's like a creeping barrage that you can target. That's just sort of going off what I've seen there. But it's looks like a very, very unique nuke. Kind of like a smart nuke. You know, the high accuracy ICBM of nukes. Feels like a very, very topical joke that we won't dig into further. See the double heretics back here for Rebel, having got them since losing both of the previous squads. And this Crisis Battlesuit team does drop a model. They cannot level up, but they are, you know, an interesting, sort of hybrid Terminator unit. They are very, very expensive to reinforce, as sort of the Terminator equivalents should be. But they are in very, very big danger of going down. They do have a lot of HP left, but... And even this broadside battlesuit looking very, very dicey right now. The Khorne Chaos Space Marines going in for the kill. It's kind of hard to say which one's going to die first. But it looks like the Khorne Chaos Space Marines actually died as they tried to chase into base. And this Crisis squad is super low right now, but the Chaos Terminators are absolutely hemorrhaging damage. They do manage to make it out of the base there, but they're being pursued by this newly arrived squad of Krutox Riders. Elite Melee Infantry, as they're called. And this is kind of a feature that I like about the tooltips. They seem to have been updated with the armor values for most units. Tangling currently with the Dreadnought. You can see the heavy melee indicator showing that they will be effective. Heretics taking significant damage versus those Vespids, but it's kind of looking like anyone's fight right now. These Krutox Riders getting pretty low, but so are the Terminators. They're going in. They do pick up the Terminators. Wow, that is an incredible pickup there for Amove. Really, really, really unlucky there by Rebel. But these things do happen sometimes, and this Chaos Dreadnought is going after these Fire Warriors who do have the Pulse Rifle upgrade. Level 3, almost level 4, putting in a lot of work. The Dreadnought taking the shortcut down the stairs there. These guys just really need to retreat. They're not going to be able to achieve anything, even with Inferno damage, against that Dreadnought. Chaos Raptors get stunned. I'm guessing that's because of the Crisis. He stuns when he jumps away, which is quite a nice little mechanic, actually. Kind of a reversal of what, you know, usual jump infantry do. We see a lot of units very, very low. These Krutox Riders are pretty low going into these Heretics, but generally it's not a problem given that, you know, these Heretics are tier 1 infantry with auto guns and grenade launchers. They shouldn't pose a big threat, and the Krutox Riders actually regenerating health at a very significant rate as they eat the bodies of the dead. This is proving to be a very, very difficult fight here for Rebel, who has managed to drop a significant chunk of their army. And they were in a very, very favourable position earlier, but it seems as if Amove has managed to just maintain much better unit preservation. With Rebel dropping now only to Heretics and a Chaos Lord. Chaos Lord has been present for a lot of the fights, but is only level 3 compared here to the relatively light XV8 commander who is level 6, who has been just chipping away at Chaos Space Marines constantly, getting XP from kills. And this Chaos Lord has been a threat, but definitely a threat that has been successfully managed here by Amove. I do wonder if they're called Amove because Amove is the only move that they know how to do, but well, that's kind of neither here nor there right now. Another Predator we do see coming out here from Rebel, and they're also getting some more Chaos Space Marines, which is definitely a decision I find questionable given that the Khorne Marines weren't really doing much for them before. These Vespids are kind of quivering in the corner, very unfortunately. And they do need to be careful. We do see the broadside setting up here, trying to get a few pot shots on the Predator. We get a rear armor shot there, but the Predator does successfully back up. Khorne Chaos Space Marines channeling their upgrade, but it does feel a little bit lackluster. These guys are just Khorne Marines, they're only level 1, and these Krutox Riders are level 2, and these ones, which are reasonably fresh, are still level 1. Tau Fire Warriors trying to chase the Chaos off the cap, but there comes a crippling global with that incendiary strike, and it does take out the heretics. Fire Warriors will have to get out because these Khorne Marines eat them for breakfast. But they managed to do it without dropping a model, which is quite impressive, and now that the Krutox Riders have turned up, it's looking pretty dicey for these guys. They are not going to enjoy this fight at all. And if we look at the VPs, 4 VPs to 75, the game is closing down. The Khorne Marines get wiped out, and the new squad just do not put up enough of a threat. And that is the game. Very interesting to see Tau coming back. This Predator just being taken out at the very end of the game by these power melee Vespid and the Tau commander. Very intriguing. It's very exciting to see a new faction turning up in such an old game. It's almost 20 years old now, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. If you have any replays that you'd like me to look at, please send them my way. And I won't make any promises, but I'd love to try and get them out. Thanks.